Listen carefully. Your life is not hard because of events. Your life is hard because you take everything personally. Every look, every word, every silence. You react. You explain. You defend. And every reaction hands your power away. This audiobook is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming untouchable, unmoved by disrespect, unshaken by opinions, uncontrolled by emotions that don't serve you. You have a choice. Stay reactive and stay weak, or train emotional discipline and become impossible to shake. That's the line. And this audiobook shows you how to cross it. You've heard the truth. Now comes the choice. You can keep reacting, keep explaining, keep letting small comments steal your focus. Or you can decide right now that your emotions are no longer public property. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need their validation. What you need is discipline. Pause before reaction. Silence before explanation. Calm before action. That's the key. From this moment forward, when something tries to shake you, you don't flinch. You don't react. You don't engage emotionally. You move with control. You think with clarity. You act with purpose. That's how you become emotionally untouchable. Now go live it. Chapter 1. Stop taking things personally. Most of your emotional pain comes from one habit. You take things personally. A look feels like disrespect. Comment feels like an attack. Silence feels like rejection. And instantly your emotions spike. Here's the truth you must accept if you want emotional strength. Almost nothing people say or do is about you. That's the key. People speak from their fears. They act from their insecurities. They project their frustrations. You are just the screen. When someone criticizes you, it's not about your worth. It's about their inner conflict. When someone dismisses you, it's not proof of your insignificance. It's proof of their limitations. Say it clearly. It's not about me. It never was. Asterisk asterisk. But your mind doesn't want truth. It wants stories. And the story it tells you is dangerous. They disrespected me. They don't value me. They're trying to undermine me. Those stories trigger emotion. Emotion triggers reaction. Reaction costs power. You have a choice. You can keep believing every emotional interpretation your mind offers. Or you can pause and question it. That pause is discipline. Taking things personally is not insight. It's an emotional reflex. You weren't born with it. You learned it. As a child, everything felt personal because you were the center of your world. But as an adult, that mindset keeps you weak. Strong people don't assume everything is about them. They assume most things are noise. That's the difference. When you take things personally, you give strangers access to your nervous system. They can ruin your mood with a sentence, control your focus with a glance, hijack your day without permission. And yes, asterisk asterisk, you don't need their permission. Asterisk asterisk. You hand it over voluntarily. Think about how absurd that is. Someone you barely know. Someone who hasn't earned your respect. Someone who won't matter in 5 years. And yet, their words decide how you feel. That is emotional slavery. The emotionally disciplined person lives differently. They observe before reacting. They separate facts from interpretation. Fact: someone spoke sharply. Interpretation: they disrespected me. Those are not the same. Fact: Someone ignored your message. Interpretation. They don't care about me. Again, not the same. Facts are neutral. Interpretations are emotional. And here's the rule you must drill into your mind. You control the interpretation. That's the key. When you feel triggered, don't ask, "Why did they do that?" Ask, "What story am I telling myself right now?" Then challenge it. Is this about me? Or is this about them? 9 times out of 10, it's about them. Their stress, their ego, their mood, their unhealed wounds. Repeat it until it sticks. It's not about me. It never was. Asterisk asterisk. This shift alone will change how you move through the world. You stop defending yourself. You stop over-explaining. You stop reacting emotionally to imagined threats. Instead, you pause. And in that pause, you gain power. Here's a practical rule you must follow. No emotional reaction in the first 5 seconds. 5 seconds of silence. 5 seconds of breathing. 5 seconds of restraint. That's discipline. Most people react in half a second. That's why they stay predictable. That's why they stay manipulable. When you delay reaction, you break the pattern. Someone throws a comment. You don't catch it. You let it fall. That alone confuses emotionally reactive people. They expect defense. They expect explanation. They expect emotion. And when they don't get it, they lose leverage. This is not weakness. This is control. Another rule: stop asking yourself how things feel. Start asking what matters. Asterisk asterisk. Feelings are temporary. Principles are stable. You don't build emotional strength by chasing comfort. You build it through discipline. It's not about sensitivity. It's about control. Say it clearly. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Asterisk asterisk. When you stop taking things personally, something powerful happens. You become calm under pressure, clear under criticism, stable in chaos. People notice, not because you're louder, but because you're unshaken. That's real confidence. And understand this: emotionally untouchable people still feel emotions. They just don't obey them. Feeling anger is human. Acting from it is optional. You have a choice. Every trigger is a test. Will you react, or will you lead yourself? Every comment is a fork in the road. Emotional impulse or disciplined response. That's the training. So the next time something stings, do this. Pause. Breathe. Say internally, "It's not about me. It never was." Then choose your response deliberately. Sometimes the response is silence. Sometimes it's a calm boundary. Sometimes it's no response at all. And that's fine. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need to be understood to be strong. You don't need to react to prove anything. Your power grows in proportion to how little you take personally. This is the foundation. Because once you stop internalizing everything, you stop leaking energy. And when your energy stops leaking, you become dangerous in the best way. Calm, centered, untouchable. You've learned to stop taking things personally. Now it's time to see what emotional reactions really cost you. You mastered the first layer of emotional control. Now let's expose the real price you've been paying. Chapter 2. Emotional reactions are a loss of power. The moment you react emotionally, you lose something valuable. You lose control. That's the cost. Most people don't see it. They think emotional reactions are natural. They think speaking up immediately is strength. They think defending themselves proves confidence. Doesn't. Proves vulnerability. Because here's the rule that governs every human interaction. If they can trigger you, they control you. Say it again. Slowly. If they can trigger you, they control you. That's the key. The person who controls the emotional temperature controls the situation. Not the loudest voice. Not the angriest response. The calmest presence. Every emotional reaction is a signal. It tells the world exactly where your buttons are. And once someone knows your buttons, they don't need power. They just need pressure. Think about arguments. Two people disagree. One raises their voice. The other stays calm. Who looks stronger? Who feels more grounded? Who walks away with dignity? Always the calm one. The emotional one may feel, right? But they are exposed. In workplaces, this happens every day. A colleague criticizes you publicly. Your heart rate spikes. Your mind races. You feel the urge to respond immediately. You snap back. You explain yourself. You defend. And in doing so, you lose. Not because your argument was wrong, but because your emotion revealed insecurity. The calm person doesn't rush. They pause. They respond later or not at all. And suddenly the power dynamic shifts. That's not accidental. That's discipline. You have a choice. You can react emotionally and feel relief for 5 seconds. Or you can stay composed and keep control for a lifetime. Most people choose relief. Strong people choose power. It's not about being passive. It's about being precise. Say it clearly. It's not about reaction. It's about discipline. In relationships, emotional reactions do even more damage. One emotional outburst can undo months of trust. One impulsive message can't be taken back. One reactive moment can define how someone sees you. And here's the hard truth. People respect emotional control far more than emotional honesty. They say they want honesty. What they respond to is stability. The person who doesn't get rattled. The person who doesn't explode. The person who doesn't beg to be understood. That person feels safe. That person feels strong. If someone can pull an emotional reaction out of you whenever they want, they don't need to respect you. They already own leverage. So let's break the habit. The habit of instant reaction. The habit of emotional explanations. The habit of defending your ego. Here's the rule you must adopt. Never react at the peak of emotion. Never. Anger peaks quickly. So does embarrassment. So does frustration. And peaks distort judgment. When emotion is high, intelligence is low. That's not an insult. It's biology. So when emotion rises, you pause. You breathe. You slow your speech. You reduce words. Sometimes the strongest response is none. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a refusal to give away power. And remember this, you don't need their permission to pause. You don't owe anyone an immediate response. You don't owe anyone emotional access. You don't owe anyone an explanation in the heat of the moment. You owe yourself control. That's the key. Think about the people you admire most. The ones who command respect without trying. They don't react quickly. They don't argue emotionally. They don't chase the last word. They let others burn themselves out. And when they speak, it lands. That's power. Now, here's where most people get it wrong. They think emotional control means suppressing feelings. Doesn't. You still feel anger. You still feel irritation. You still feel disappointment. The difference is timing. You feel but you don't act. You process privately. You decide deliberately. That's emotional adulthood. Children react. Adults choose. You have a choice. Next time someone tries to provoke you, ask yourself one question. What would keeping my power look like right now? Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's a calm sentence. Sometimes it's walking away. But it is never an emotional outburst. Because every outburst teaches people how to manipulate you. And yes, some people do it intentionally. They poke. They test. They provoke. Not because they're strong, but because they want a reaction. When you don't give it to them, they lose interest. That's the paradox. Emotionally reactive people attract conflict. Emotionally disciplined people repel it. So here's your training exercise. For the next week, treat every emotional trigger as a test. A test of discipline. A test of self-command. When you feel the urge to react, say internally, if they can trigger me, they control me. Then pause. Even 3 seconds changes everything. That pause breaks the chain. Trigger. Reaction. Regret. You replace it with a new pattern. Trigger. Pause. Choice. That's the upgrade. And once you experience the power of not reacting, you won't want to go back. You'll notice something important. People speak to you differently. They push less. They test less. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're solid. Emotionally untouchable people don't announce their strength. They demonstrate it. Calm voice, measured words, controlled presence. That's how power looks in real life. You've now seen the cost of emotional reactions. You've seen how every reaction hands control away. This is the second layer of becoming untouchable. But emotional reactions don't come from nowhere. They're fueled by something deeper. A hunger. A need. And that need makes people weak. You've learned how reactions steal your power. Now let's expose the hunger behind them. Chapter 3. Why needing validation makes you weak. There is a quiet addiction ruining your emotional strength. Validation. The need to be approved. The need to be understood. The need to be agreed with. Most people don't see it as weakness. They call it being human. They call it being open. They call it being honest. But here is the truth. The more you need validation, the weaker you become. That's the key. Because the moment you need approval, you hand control to the people whose approval you seek. They don't even have to try. Your behavior adjusts automatically. You speak differently. You hesitate. You explain too much. You soften your truth. And all of that leaks power. Say it clearly. You don't need their permission. Not to think. Not to act. Not to exist as you are. Yet most people live as if they do. They check reactions before committing to a decision. They measure worth by responses. They feel anxious when their words aren't affirmed. That anxiety is not sensitivity. It's dependence. And dependence is exploitable. If someone knows you need their approval, they can control you with silence, with indifference, with a raised eyebrow. They don't need to confront you. They just withhold validation. That's power over you. You have a choice. You can keep outsourcing your self-worth, or you can reclaim it. And reclaiming it starts with understanding this. Wanting to be understood is a trap. The more you want people to understand you, The more you explain, the more you justify, the more you expose yourself emotionally. An explanation invites judgment. Strong people don't over-explain. They state, they decide, they move. Weak people explain until they're exhausted. It's not about clarity. It's about insecurity. Say it again. It's not about communication. It's about discipline. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need to understand yourself. That's the key. Look at any powerful individual. They are often misunderstood, misinterpreted, criticized, and they don't rush to fix it. Why? Because they don't need approval to stay grounded. They don't need applause to act. They don't need consensus to move forward. They lead themselves. Most people do the opposite. They wait for permission disguised as validation. They hesitate until others nod. They abandon decisions the moment resistance appears. That's not flexibility. That's fragility. And fragility invites pressure. Here's a reality check you need to hear. The world does not reward people who need to be liked. It rewards people who are stable, predictable to themselves, unmoved by fluctuating opinions. If your emotional state depends on feedback, your life will always feel unstable. One compliment lifts you. One criticism ruins you. That's not strength. That's emotional gambling. So let's break the pattern. First rule: stop explaining your decisions to people who don't live with the consequences. If they don't pay the price, they don't get a vote. That's the key. Second rule: notice when you seek validation and pause. That urge to check reactions. That impulse to justify. That need to be reassured. Pause there. Ask yourself one question. Am I speaking to express truth or to gain approval? If it's approval, stop. Silence is stronger than validation-seeking speech. Third rule: practice internal validation. Decide what matters to you. Set your standards. Measure yourself against them. Not against applause. Not against agreement. Not against likes or approval. You don't need their permission to trust your judgment. And yes, this will feel uncomfortable at first, because validation is soothing, feels safe. But safety is not strength. Strength is self-trust under pressure. When you stop seeking validation, something powerful happens. People feel it. They sense that you're not fishing, not adjusting, not performing. You speak less but with weight. And ironically, this is when respect shows up. Not because you asked for it, but because you no longer needed it. That's how it works. The less you crave approval, the more authority you project. The more you chase understanding, the less you're taken seriously. It's backwards, but it's real. Say it again. You don't need their permission. Not to disagree. Not to stay silent. Not to walk away. And here's the final truth of this chapter. People who need validation are easy to manipulate. People who validate themselves are impossible to move. Emotionally untouchable people don't beg to be seen. They stand. They don't chase agreement. They choose direction. They don't explain themselves endlessly. They let results speak. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be solid. This chapter strips away another weakness. You've stopped reacting emotionally. You've stopped needing approval. But there's still one thing that keeps people hooked emotionally: opinions. And until you detach from them, you will never be fully free. You've broken your addiction to validation. Now it's time to cut the final emotional tether. Chapter 3: Why Needing Validation Makes You Weak. There is a quiet addiction ruining your emotional strength. Validation. The need to be approved. The need to be understood. The need to be agreed with. Most people don't see it as weakness. They call it being human. They call it being open. They call it being honest. But here is the truth. The more you need validation, the weaker you become. That's the key. Because the moment you need approval, you hand control to the people whose approval you seek. They don't even have to try. Your behavior adjusts automatically. You speak differently. You hesitate. You explain too much. You soften your truth. And all of that leaks power. Say it clearly. You don't need their permission. Not to think. Not to act. Not to exist as you are. Yet most people live as if they do. They check reactions before committing to a decision. They measure worth by responses. They feel anxious when their words aren't affirmed. That anxiety is not sensitivity. It's dependence. And dependence is exploitable. If someone knows you need their approval, they can control you with silence, with indifference, with a raised eyebrow. They don't need to confront you. They just withhold validation. That's power over you. You have a choice. You can keep outsourcing your self-worth, or you can reclaim it. And reclaiming it starts with understanding this. Wanting to be understood is a trap. The more you want people to understand you, the more you explain, the more you justify, the more you expose yourself emotionally. An explanation invites judgment. Strong people don't over-explain. They state. They decide. They move. Weak people explain until they're exhausted. It's not about clarity. It's about insecurity. Say it again. It's not about communication. It's about discipline. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need to understand yourself. That's the key. Look at any powerful individual. They are often misunderstood, misinterpreted, criticized, and they don't rush to fix it. Why? Because they don't need approval to stay grounded. They don't need applause to act. They don't need consensus to move forward. They lead themselves. Most people do the opposite. They wait for permission disguised as validation. They hesitate until others nod. They abandon decisions the moment resistance appears. That's not flexibility. That's fragility. And fragility invites pressure. Here's a reality check you need to hear. The world does not reward people who need to be liked. It rewards people who are stable, predictable to themselves, unmoved by fluctuating opinions. If your emotional state depends on feedback, your life will always feel unstable. One compliment lifts you. One criticism ruins you. That's not strength. That's emotional gambling. So let's break the pattern. First rule: stop explaining your decisions to people who don't live with the consequences. If they don't pay the price, they don't get a vote. That's the key. Second rule: notice when you seek validation and pause. That urge to check reactions. That impulse to justify. That need to be reassured. Pause there. Ask yourself one question. Am I speaking to express truth or to gain approval? If it's approval, stop. Silence is stronger than validation-seeking speech. Third rule: practice internal validation. Decide what matters to you. Set your standards. Measure yourself against them. Not against applause. Not against agreement. not against likes or approval. You don't need their permission to trust your judgment. And yes, this will feel uncomfortable at first, because validation is soothing, feels safe, but safety is not strength. Strength is self-trust under pressure. When you stop seeking validation, something powerful happens. People feel it. They sense that you're not fishing, not adjusting, not performing. You speak less but with weight. And ironically, this is when respect shows up. Not because you asked for it, but because you no longer needed it. That's how it works. The less you crave approval, the more authority you project. The more you chase understanding, the less you're taken seriously. It's backwards, but it's real. Say it again. You don't need their permission. Not to disagree. Not to stay silent. Not to walk away. And here's the final truth of this chapter. People who need validation are easy to manipulate. People who validate themselves are impossible to move. Emotionally untouchable people don't beg to be seen. They stand. They don't chase agreement. They choose direction. They don't explain themselves endlessly. They let results speak. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be solid. This chapter strips away another weakness. You've stopped reacting emotionally. You've stopped needing approval. But there's still one thing that keeps people hooked emotionally. Opinions. And until you detach from them, you will never be fully free. You've broken your addiction to validation. Now it's time to cut the final emotional tether. Chapter 4. Detach from opinions that don't pay your bills. Most people are trapped by invisible chains. Opinions. Not facts. Not reality. Opinions. Someone thinks you're wrong. Someone doubts you. Someone disagrees with your direction. And suddenly your mind wavers. You hesitate. You second guess. You slow down. Here's the truth you must accept if you want emotional freedom. Other people's opinions do not build your future. Your discipline does. That's the key. Opinions don't pay your bills. They don't build your skills. They don't carry the consequences of your decisions. Yet people give them power. They rearrange their lives to avoid judgment. They abandon plans to maintain approval. They mute ambition to stay comfortable. That is not humility. That is fear. And fear keeps you small. Say it clearly and repeat it until it sinks in. Their opinion changes nothing. Nothing about your capability. Nothing about your direction. Nothing about your potential. Opinions are noise. Discipline is signal. The problem is not that people have opinions. The problem is that you listen to everyone equally. You don't filter. You give a stranger's comment the same weight as lived experience. You let someone who hasn't built anything advise you on building. That's backwards. Strong people filter aggressively. They ask one question before listening. Has this person earned the right to influence me? If the answer is no, their opinion becomes background noise. This is not arrogance. This is clarity. Emotional detachment is not superiority. It's self-respect. You don't need their permission to ignore opinions that don't serve your path. And yes, you don't need their permission to move forward. Most opinions come from fear. Fear of risk. Fear of failure. Fear of standing out. So when someone says, "That won't work," be realistic. Why would you try? What they're really saying is, "I wouldn't dare." That fear is not yours to carry. Say it again. Their opinion changes nothing. Now here's the discipline you must practice. Separate input from impact. You can hear opinions without absorbing them. You can listen without internalizing. You can acknowledge without obeying. Just because someone speaks doesn't mean you adjust. You have a choice. You can let opinions slow you down, or you can let discipline move you forward. And discipline looks boring from the outside. It's repetition, consistency, daily effort without applause. Opinions are loud. Discipline is quiet. But only one of them produces results. Think about this. Most people who criticize you are not qualified to replace you. They won't live your life. They won't carry your regret. They won't build your future. So why would you let them steer? That's the cost of emotional attachment to opinion. You lose momentum. Here's a practical rule you must adopt. If an opinion doesn't come with responsibility, it doesn't matter. No responsibility for outcome, no vote, no accountability, no influence. That's the filter. Another rule: stop explaining your vision to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Some people don't want clarity. They want control. The more you explain, the more they poke holes. Not to help you, but to protect their comfort. So stop. Silence is powerful. It says, I'm not here to convince you. And remember, you don't need their permission to stay silent. Emotionally untouchable people don't argue with opinions. They outgrow them. They keep working. They keep building. They let results speak. And results silence opinions better than arguments ever will. Say it again. Their opinion changes nothing. Now let's address the fear underneath all of this. The fear of being judged. The fear of being talked about. The fear of being wrong. Here's the truth. People will judge you no matter what. Do nothing, they judge. Do something, they judge. Succeed, they judge. Fail, they judge. So if judgment is guaranteed, you might as well choose progress. You have a choice. Stay stuck and be judged. Or move forward and be judged. One leads nowhere. The other builds a life. And over time, something interesting happens. The same people who doubted you will start watching quietly, not because they changed, but because you did. Your consistency creates authority. Not words, not opinions, not arguments. Discipline. That's the key. This chapter trains you to detach emotionally from noise, to stop adjusting to voices that don't matter, to stand steady while others talk. You're becoming harder to shake. But there is still one habit that keeps people emotionally exposed. A habit that leaks energy faster than opinions ever could. Talking, explaining, responding when silence would be stronger. You've detached from opinions that don't pay your bills. Now it's time to master the weapon that protects your energy. Chapter 5. Silence is your strongest defense. Most people talk themselves into weakness. They explain. They justify. They clarify. They defend. And with every word, their energy leaks. Here is the truth most people never learn. Explaining yourself is emotional leakage. Silence closes the door. That's the key. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is control. When you rush to explain, you're not communicating strength. You're signaling insecurity. You're saying, please understand me. Please agree with me. Please validate my position. And the moment you say that without words, you lower yourself. Say it clearly and repeat it until it rewires your behavior. Silence protects your energy. Powerful people understand this instinctively. They don't correct every misunderstanding. They don't respond to every accusation. They don't rush to clean up every false narrative. Why? Because they know something you must learn now. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every silence is a loss. Most explanations are not about clarity. They're about discomfort. You feel uncomfortable being misunderstood. So you talk. You feel tension. So you fill the space with words. But discomfort is not danger. It's a test. And every test gives you a choice. You have a choice. You can speak to relieve anxiety. Or you can stay silent and keep power. One gives short-term comfort. The other builds long-term authority. That's the difference. Think about arguments. The person who talks more loses. They reveal emotion. They reveal motive. They reveal insecurity. The person who pauses, listens, and says less forces the other side to expose themselves. Silence creates pressure, and pressure reveals truth. That's why silence feels uncomfortable. It removes the shield of noise. Now understand this clearly. Silence is not avoidance. It is strategy. It's not about being passive. It's about being selective. Say it again. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. Here's where most people fail. They think silence means losing control of the narrative. They fear being misjudged. They fear being seen as wrong. But listen carefully. You do not control how people think about you. You never did. Trying to manage perceptions exhausts you. Trying to correct every story drains you. And it never ends. Emotionally untouchable people stop playing that game. They let time and consistency speak. They let results do the talking. Because results don't argue. Results don't explain. Results don't beg to be understood. Results silence critics automatically. That's the key. Here's a rule you must install immediately. Never explain yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. Some people don't want truth. They want reaction. They want to pull emotion out of you. They want to see you flinch. Silence denies them that reward. And remember, you don't need their permission to stay silent. You don't owe anyone an instant response. You don't owe anyone emotional access. You don't owe anyone your energy. Your energy is currency. Spend it carefully. Here's another hard truth. The more you explain yourself, the less people respect you. Not because explanations are wrong, but because unnecessary explanations signal doubt. Strong people state once. Weak people repeat. Strong people act. Weak people talk. Say it again. Silence protects your energy. Now let's get practical. When someone misunderstands you, ask yourself this. Will explaining change anything? If the answer is no, stay silent. When someone criticizes you unfairly, ask, is this person open to truth or feeding their ego? If it's ego, silence wins. When someone provokes you emotionally, ask, what happens if I don't respond? Usually they collapse under their own noise. Silence forces people to sit with themselves. And most can't handle that. This is why silence feels powerful. Because it removes emotional supply. Emotionally reactive people feed on reaction. Silence starves them. That's control. And understand this. Silence doesn't mean forever. It means timing. You speak when calm. You respond when clear. You act when strategic, never when emotional, never when triggered, never when pressured. Because once you speak from emotion, you lose leverage. Every time, you have a choice. Speak to feel better now, or stay silent and stay strong. And strength compounds. The more you practice silence, the calmer you become. The calmer you become, the harder you are to shake. People notice. They feel it. Your presence changes. Not louder, not aggressive, steady. And that steadiness creates psychological dominance. People slow down around you. They choose words more carefully. They push less. Not because you threaten them, but because you don't leak. Emotionally untouchable people don't chase control. They radiate it. Silence is how that begins. Say it one last time. Silence protects your energy. You are no longer explaining yourself. No longer defending reflexively. No longer reacting just to relieve tension. You are choosing restraint. And restraint is strength. This chapter gives you a shield. But shields are not enough. To become truly untouchable, you must master something deeper. The ability to control not just what you say, but what events mean to you internally. Because meaning creates emotion, and emotion drives reaction. You've learned to protect your energy with silence. Now it's time to control the source of emotion itself. Chapter 6. Control the meaning you assign to events. Nothing has power over you until you give it meaning. Read that again. Events are neutral. Words are neutral. Situations are neutral. Meaning is chosen. That's the key. Most people live as if events attack them personally. Comment feels like disrespect. A delay feels like rejection. A mistake feels like failure. But those are interpretations, not facts. And interpretation is where emotion is born. You don't react to what happens. You react to what you decide it means. Say it clearly, slowly. I choose the meaning. This is one of the most important skills you will ever train. Because once you control meaning, you control emotion. And once you control emotion, you control behavior. Most people skip this step. They go straight from event to emotion to reaction. Event, emotion, reaction, regret. That's the loop that keeps them weak. You're here to break it. You have a choice. An event happens. You pause. You decide what it means. Or you let your old habits decide for you. That pause is everything. That pause is discipline. It's not about sensitivity. It's about control. Say it again. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Here's a simple example. Someone cancels plans last minute. Old meaning, they don't respect me. Emotion, anger, resentment, reaction, cold messages, passive aggression, distance. New meaning, they're dealing with something. Emotion, neutral, calm. Reaction, none. Or a simple acknowledgement. Same event, different meaning, different outcome. That's power. Another example. You make a mistake at work. Old meaning, I'm incompetent. Emotion, shame, anxiety, reaction, over-explaining, defensiveness. New meaning, this is feedback. Emotion, focus, responsibility, reaction, correction, improvement. Same event, different meaning. Say it again. I choose the meaning. Most emotional suffering is not caused by reality. It's caused by the stories you tell yourself about reality. Those stories feel automatic, but they're not. They're habits, and habits can be replaced. Here's the discipline you must practice. Whenever you feel a strong emotional spike, stop and ask, what meaning did I just assign to this? Not what happened, but what does this mean to me? That question exposes the story. Then you challenge it. Is this the only possible meaning? Is this interpretation useful? Is this helping me stay in control? If not, you replace it. You don't deny the event. You redefine it. That's emotional leadership. Say it again. I choose the meaning. Now let's be clear. This is not pretending everything is positive. This is not lying to yourself. This is choosing interpretations that serve strength instead of weakness. Reality doesn't need drama. Drama is added, and most people add it unconsciously. They assume intent. They personalize neutral events. They exaggerate consequences. That's how emotion hijacks them. You're training something different. Precision. Here's another rule. Never assign meaning while emotional. Emotion distorts meaning. When emotion is high, interpretation is unreliable. So you pause. You breathe. You create space. And remember, you don't need their permission to pause. You don't need to decide instantly. You don't need to label the event immediately. Delayed meaning is powerful. Most people rush to label. Strong people wait. They say, let me see how this unfolds. That patience protects your nervous system. Now understand this. Other people benefit when you assign negative meaning quickly. They gain leverage. They gain reaction. When you stay neutral, they lose control. That's why emotional discipline feels threatening to others. They can't push your buttons because you removed the wiring. This is how you become emotionally untouchable. Not by hardening, but by choosing. Say it again. I choose the meaning. Here's a practical exercise you must do daily. At the end of each day, think of one moment that triggered emotion. Ask yourself 3 questions. What happened factually? What meaning did I assign? What meaning would have kept me calm and powerful? That's training. Over time, your default meanings change. You stop assuming disrespect. You stop assuming rejection. You stop assuming failure. You start assuming neutrality. And neutrality is freedom. Because neutral events don't control you. You do. You have a choice. Every event offers 2 paths. One leads to emotion and reaction. The other leads to clarity and response. One drains energy. The other preserves it. And the difference is meaning. That's the key. Emotionally untouchable people don't fight events. They master interpretation. They understand something most never learn. Life is not happening to you. It's happening, and you decide what it means. That decision determines your state. Your state determines your actions. Your actions determine your life. This chapter gives you the steering wheel. But emotional control doesn't end with interpretation. Because even when you choose meaning well, people will still test you. They will still push. They will still disrespect. They will still provoke. And how you handle that determines whether you stay calm or collapse. You've learned to control the meaning you assign to events. Now it's time to learn how to face disrespect without emotion. Chapter 7. Stop fighting disrespect with emotion. Disrespect only has power when you react to it. Read that again. Disrespect feeds on emotion. anger, defensiveness, explosions. And the moment you respond emotionally, you lose the advantage. Here is the rule you must burn into your mind. Emotional reactions invite more disrespect. Calm shuts it down. That's the key. Most people think respect is earned by force, by raising their voice, by pushing back harder, by proving they won't be walked over. That's a lie. Aggression does not create respect. Control does. Say it clearly. Calm always wins. When someone disrespects you, they are testing one thing: your emotional stability. They want to see if they can move you, shake you, pull a reaction out of you. If they succeed, they learn something dangerous. They can control you. And once someone knows they can control your emotions, respect disappears. Because respect only exists where there is self-command. You have a choice. You can meet disrespect with emotion and escalate chaos. Or you can meet it with calm and end the game. One feeds the fire. The other starves it. Calm is not weakness. Calm is dominance. Think about it. Who feels more powerful in a tense situation? The person yelling, or the person speaking slowly, clearly, and without emotional charge? Always the calm one. That calm creates psychological pressure. The other person feels exposed, unbalanced, out of control. They wanted reaction. They got silence or measured response. And that disarms them. Say it again. Calm always wins. In real life, disrespect often looks subtle. Sarcasm, dismissive tone, interruptions, passive-aggressive comments. Most people respond instinctively. They snap back. They get sharp. They defend their ego. And the disrespect increases. Because now it's a game. Emotion against emotion. The emotionally disciplined person does something different. They slow down. They don't match tone. They don't mirror hostility. They don't rush to assert dominance. They hold their ground calmly. That calm sends a message. You don't control me. And remember, you don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to win the moment. You need to keep your power. Here's the discipline you must practice. When disrespect shows up, do nothing immediately. Pause. Let the emotional wave rise and fall without acting on it. That pause is everything, because disrespect thrives on speed. Quick reactions. Fast escalation. Calm slows the interaction down. And whoever controls the pace controls the outcome. That's the key. Now let's address the fear most people have. They think staying calm means being passive, letting things slide, allowing mistreatment. Wrong. Calm does not mean silent submission. It means controlled response. You can set boundaries calmly. You can correct behavior without emotion. You can walk away without explanation. And when you do, the message lands harder. Because it's not fueled by anger. It's fueled by certainty. Say it again. It's not about aggression. It's about discipline. Here's a simple example. Someone speaks to you disrespectfully. Emotional response. What's your problem? Raised voice. Defensiveness. Calm response. I don't engage in conversations like that. Then silence. Which one ends the behavior? Always the calm one. Because calm removes the reward. Emotion gives them stimulation. Calm gives them nothing. Emotionally reactive people crave reaction. Calm starves them. This is how emotional control creates psychological dominance. Without aggression. You're not intimidating. You're unmovable, and that's far more powerful. Over time, people adjust how they treat you, not because you demanded respect, but because your presence demands it. Your calm becomes a boundary. Say it again. Calm always wins. Now here's the truth most people avoid. Sometimes disrespect is intentional. Some people push buttons on purpose. They poke. They test. They want to see how far they can go. Emotion is exactly what they want. When you deny it, they lose interest. When you escalate emotionally, they escalate behaviorally. You decide which cycle continues. You have a choice. Feed the disrespect with emotion, or end it with calm. And the more you practice this, the more automatic it becomes. Your nervous system rewires. You stop feeling the urge to react instantly. You stop taking the bait. You stop proving yourself. You become grounded. That grounded presence is what emotionally untouchable people are made of. They don't fight disrespect. They outgrow it. They don't react to provocation. They render it ineffective. They understand something simple and powerful. Disrespect only works on people who need to respond. Say it one last time. Calm always wins. This chapter teaches you how to stay in control under pressure. But control is not built in moments alone. It's built daily, in habits, in repetition, in small acts of restraint. And that's where most people fail. They expect emotional strength to appear when needed, without training it daily. That doesn't work. You've learned how calm shuts down disrespect. Now it's time to build emotional discipline every single day. Chapter 8. Emotional discipline is a daily practice. Emotional strength is not something you discover. You build it, and you build it the same way you build muscle. With repetition, with resistance, with daily discipline. That's the key. Most people wait for emotional strength to appear when life gets hard. It doesn't. They hope calm will magically show up under pressure. It won't. What shows up under pressure is whatever you practiced when things were easy. Say it clearly. Discipline beats emotion. Every time. Emotion is automatic. Discipline is trained. And anything untrained will fail when tested. You have a choice. You can live reactively, hoping you'll handle it better next time. Or you can train daily so next time is different by default. Emotionally untouchable people don't rely on willpower in the moment. They rely on systems, rules, habits, non-negotiables. That's how control becomes automatic. Let's remove the illusion right now. You will never eliminate emotions. That's not the goal. The goal is command. Feeling emotion is human. Being ruled by it is optional. Say it again. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Discipline is boring. It's repetitive. It's quiet. And that's why it works. Here is the daily rule you must follow, no exceptions. Pause. Breathe. Respond. Do not react. Pause. That single second interrupts the emotional reflex. Without pause, emotion runs the show. Breathe. One slow breath resets your nervous system. It signals safety. It lowers urgency. Respond. Choose words. Choose tone. Choose silence if needed. Not react. Reaction is impulse. Response is control. That sequence, pause, breathe, respond, is the foundation of emotional discipline. And yes, it must be practiced daily. Not just when things go wrong, but when things are neutral. Because training only during crisis is not training. It's gambling. You wouldn't expect strength without reps. Don't expect calm without practice. Here's another rule you must adopt. No emotional decisions when tired, hungry, stressed, or rushed. Those states lower discipline. Most emotional damage happens when your system is already compromised. Emotionally disciplined people protect their baseline. They sleep, they eat, they reduce unnecessary chaos. Not because they're soft, but because they're strategic. Energy management is emotional control. Say it again. Discipline beats emotion. Now let's talk about consistency. One calm response doesn't change your life. 100 do. Repetition rewires you. Each time you pause instead of reacting, you strengthen the neural pathway of control. Each time you stay silent instead of explaining, you reinforce authority. Each time you choose restraint, you weaken impulsive habits. That's how identity changes. You stop trying to be calm. You become calm, and people notice, not because you announce it, but because your behavior is stable. Stability is rare, and rare things are respected. Here's a practical daily drill. At the end of every day, ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I feel triggered today? Did I react or respond? What will I do differently next time? No shame, no excuses, just awareness. Awareness creates improvement. Avoidance creates repetition. That's the key. Now understand this. Emotional discipline is not about perfection. You will slip. You will react sometimes. The difference is what you do next. Undisciplined people justify reactions. Disciplined people correct them. They don't spiral. They don't overanalyze. They adjust and move on. That's maturity. Another daily rule: reduce emotional input. Limit arguments. Limit drama. Limit unnecessary opinions. You don't need to consume everything. You don't need to respond to everything. Remember, you don't need their permission to disengage. Disengagement is not weakness. It's conservation. You conserve energy for what matters. Emotionally undisciplined people waste energy everywhere. Emotionally disciplined people invest it carefully. And investment compounds. Over time, emotional discipline changes how others treat you. People test less, push less, provoke less, not because you demanded it, but because you're predictable to yourself and unreadable to others. That's power. Say it again. Discipline beats emotion. This chapter is about removing the fantasy. There is no shortcut, no hack, no moment of awakening that makes you immune forever. There is only practice, daily, unseen, uncelebrated, and that's why it works. Because most people won't do it. They want intensity without discipline, results without repetition, control without effort. You are choosing differently. You are training calm when no one is watching. And that is what makes you dangerous in the best sense. You are becoming emotionally untouchable not by force, but by consistency. But daily discipline creates something even deeper than calm. It creates predictability within yourself. And when you are predictable to yourself, others lose leverage. That is the next level. You've learned that emotional discipline is built daily. Now it's time to make yourself predictable and others powerless. Chapter 9. Become predictable to yourself, unreadable to others. Power begins the moment you become predictable to yourself. not predictable to others, not easy to read, not emotionally transparent, predictable internally, unreadable externally. That's the key. Most people live in reverse. They are unpredictable to themselves, reacting differently every time, depending on mood, stress, or pressure. But they are completely readable to others. Everyone knows what sets them off. Everyone knows how to provoke them. Everyone knows what buttons to press. And because of that, they are controllable. Here is the truth you must accept. When you master your responses, others lose leverage over you. Say it clearly, slowly. I decide how I respond. That sentence is the backbone of emotional authority. Emotionally weak people react. Emotionally strong people respond. Reaction is automatic. Response is chosen. And choice is power. You have a choice. Every situation presents it, even if it feels instant. Someone challenges you. Someone disrespects you. Someone pressures you. You can respond from habit, or you can respond from discipline. That's the difference between chaos and control. Emotionally untouchable people build internal rules. Rules remove decision fatigue. Rules eliminate hesitation. They don't ask, "How do I feel right now?" They ask, "What do I do in situations like this?" And the answer is already decided. That's predictability to yourself. Say it again. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Here's why this matters. If your responses change based on mood, people learn to wait you out. They push when you're tired. They provoke when you're stressed. They pressure when you're emotional. They study you. And when you're inconsistent, you give them leverage. But when your responses are stable, they lose it. They can't predict reaction. They can't provoke response. They can't move you. You become unreadable. And unreadable people are hard to manipulate. That's the key. Think about the most grounded people you know. They don't overreact on bad days. They don't get euphoric on good days. They are steady. That steadiness creates authority. Not authority over others. Authority over themselves. And self-authority is the only kind that lasts. Say it again. I decide how I respond. Now let's get practical. To become predictable to yourself, you must standardize your responses. Here's how. Rule 1. Same behavior under pressure as under calm. No exceptions. Your tone doesn't change because someone raises theirs. Your values don't disappear because you feel attacked. Your discipline doesn't collapse because you're uncomfortable. Pressure reveals training. Rule 2. No instant emotional decisions. Ever. If a decision feels urgent and emotional, it waits. That pause is not hesitation. It's leadership. And remember, you don't need their permission to delay. Rule 3. Your response is based on principles, not people. You don't adjust behavior to personalities. You act according to your rules. Respectful tone. Clear boundaries. Minimal explanation. Always. That consistency removes emotional chaos. Now let's talk about being unreadable. Unreadable does not mean cold. It means controlled. It means people cannot tell what you're thinking because you don't broadcast emotion. Your face doesn't betray irritation. Your words don't leak insecurity. Your reactions don't reveal pressure points. And this does something powerful. People stop testing because tests require feedback. Emotion is feedback. Silence. Calm. Measured response. Those give nothing. Emotionally reactive people invite games. Emotionally disciplined people end them. Say it again. I decide how I respond. Here's an important warning. Being unreadable will make some people uncomfortable. They're used to reading faces, predicting reactions, pulling emotional strings. When they can't read you, they lose advantage, and some will try harder. That's when your discipline is tested. You don't change. You don't explain. You don't soften to make them comfortable. You stay consistent. Consistency is dominance without aggression. Now understand this. This is not about manipulation. It's about protection. You're not hiding to deceive. You're stabilizing to lead. Lead yourself first. When your internal world is predictable, your external world stabilizes. Less conflict, less drama, less emotional exhaustion, and more respect, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it through self-command. You have a choice. Be emotionally expressive and easily influenced, or be emotionally disciplined and unmovable. One feels free but is fragile. The other feels restrained but is powerful. And restraint practiced daily becomes freedom. Say it one last time. I decide how I respond. This chapter is about closing the final gaps. No more emotional surprises. No more inconsistent behavior. No more being read like an open book. You are solid now, predictable to yourself, unreadable to others. But this is not a technique. It's an identity, and identities require commitment. The final chapter is not about learning something new. It's about choosing to live this way permanently. You've mastered your responses and taken back leverage. Now it's time to lock this in as a way of life. Chapter 10. Untouchable is a way of life. This is where it stops being a technique and becomes who you are. Emotional untouchability is not something you switch on when life gets hard. It's not a trick you remember under pressure. It's not a mask you wear in public. It's an identity. That's the key. Most people want tools, tactics, quick fixes. They want to stay the same person, but react better occasionally. That doesn't work. Because under pressure, identity always wins. You don't rise to your intentions. You fall to your habits. So this chapter is not about learning more. It's about deciding who you are from now on. Say it clearly. Nothing outside me controls me. Not words. Not opinions. Not disrespect. Not silence. Not pressure. You decide. You have a choice. You can keep living as someone who reacts, who explains, who negotiates their emotional state with the world. Or you can live as someone who moves forward regardless. Emotionally untouchable people don't wake up asking, "How will today make me feel?" They ask, "How will I act?" Action comes first. Emotion follows. That's discipline. Say it again. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. An untouchable life has rules. Simple ones. You stop reacting. You stop explaining. You stop performing for understanding. And you start moving forward. Movement is the cure. Reaction keeps you stuck. Explanation keeps you anchored to the past. Movement creates distance. Distance creates peace. Here's what changes when this becomes your identity. You no longer argue to be right. You no longer defend your intentions. You no longer chase closure. You choose clarity over comfort. You accept that not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will like you. Not everyone will agree. And you're fine with that, because agreement is not required for progress. Say it again. Nothing outside me controls me. Emotionally untouchable people don't need to win conversations. They win by not needing to win. They don't need the last word. They don't need acknowledgement. They don't need validation. They need alignment. Alignment between values and actions, between standards and behavior. That alignment creates inner authority. And inner authority is unshakable. This is where people misunderstand you. They think you've become cold, detached, unbothered. You haven't. You've become selective. You still care, but not compulsively. You still feel, but not impulsively. You still engage, but not emotionally. You decide where your energy goes. That's adulthood. That's strength. And yes, you don't need their permission to live this way. Some people will test the new you. They'll provoke. They'll guilt. They'll say you've changed. They're right. You have. You stopped bleeding energy everywhere. And when they don't get the old reactions, they'll either adjust or drift away. Both outcomes are acceptable. Untouchable people don't cling. They let life reorganize around their discipline. Here's the final rule you must live by. Protect your internal state more than you protect your image. Image fades. Calm compounds. Reputation fluctuates. Self-command endures. Every time you choose restraint, you reinforce your identity. Every time you stay silent instead of explaining, you deepen authority. Every time you respond instead of reacting, you become harder to move. This is not suppression. It's sovereignty. Say it one last time with conviction. Nothing outside me controls me. This does not mean life gets easier. It means you get steadier. Problems still show up. People still disappoint. Pressure still exists. But now it hits armor, not exposed nerves. You are no longer living at the mercy of triggers. You are no longer renting peace from external approval. Your calm comes from discipline. Your strength comes from consistency. Your freedom comes from self-command. And this is the truth that ends the book. Emotionally untouchable is not a destination. It's a daily decision. Every morning, every interaction, every moment of pressure, you choose who leads, emotion or discipline. You already know the answer. You've trained it chapter by chapter. Now live it. No announcements, no explanations, no performance, just quiet control. That's the life. That's the identity. That's what it means to be emotionally untouchable.